Hello and welcome back again. One of the previous videos we did was on a 50mm picture frame kit. This very short video is going to be on a 100mm picture frame kit. I've got the bits here, or some of the bits anyway: plywood back, perspex or clear acrylic front, and there'll be 3 connectors on the rear as in the 50mm kit. I'm just going to quickly run over what I've done here. The sun's behind me, I know it's very bright. Unfortunately the business is at the stage where I have to grab any opportunity that I can to come in here and do the videos, so my apologies for that, but I'll zoom in on the bit of wood and explain what I've done on here and how I've mounted this. This is going to be relevant to my jaws. I use record chucks and jaws. I would hope that others would be a similar kind of size, but obviously there's so many out there I can't allocate for all of them. But let's have a closer look at this and see what we can do. Now I've got my wood screw and I've drilled a hole in the centre. My wood screw takes a 9mm hole, and I've attached this bit of scrap ash onto here from a plank. It's a fairly hefty piece, and as I said on the other video, the narrower the frame you're making, the more difficult it is to do, because it involves going all the way through the wood. Now I mentioned earlier that I was using my chucks. This is a record chuck. It's just one of the ones that I use. I quite like record chucks, and these are large jaws. Now you'll see when you look at the wood that I've made some markings on here. There's an external ring, that's the outer ring, that's the biggest circle I could get from the piece of wood I'm using, and I've then made another mark on the inside here, and this relates to the diameter of these jaws when they're closed as tight as they can be, because these jaws, when they're as tight as they can be, are just fractionally smaller than the back plate, and they need to be, because this hole that we're going to do here, start doing here, is the front of the frame, and you'll see when I do this, this piece has to be turned backwards and forwards quite a few times in order to get through and not catch your tools on the chuck and the jaws. Well, I'm lucky enough that I've got 2 sets of jaws, so I've already got the ones on here, so I'm just going to make sure that they fit. You can obviously measure them, and they do indeed just go in there, and I also need to make sure that that doesn't quite fit in there, so that's right. That is as wide as they can go. I'm now just going to flatten off this face here, so when we put it on the chuck it fits flat on the chuck, and then we'll turn the piece of wood around and start the other side. I've remounted the piece on the large jaws. I'm now going to flatten the face of this and mark, and I might not even mark, I might just cut a hole so that this disc, this rear disc, or the face as well, will fit in the hole, because it needs to fit in the back but it needs to not fall out the front, which hopefully is fairly obvious. You'll notice I'm using a full face mask because this is quite a hefty chunk. The one thing I will say at this point, when you're expanding on pieces like this, don't overexpand them. You're putting pressure, forcing pressure outwards on this piece. If you have a crack or any weakness in this bit of wood, particularly as it gets thinner, if you've over expanded them, there's a chance you could crack the piece and it'll come flying off the lathe. So now I've got it fairly flat, I'm just going to use a steel rule to measure a radius of 50mm, which is about there. Put that little mark on there. We'll mark that round and then cut to that, and just actually use this piece and make sure it fits in there. So now, having done that, what we need to start thinking about is how thick we want the piece. I can remount this now in the jaws by turning it round. This is the rear of the frame and this will be the front of the frame, but at the moment this is quite thick. If I wanted to, I could probably leave it this thick and make it freestanding, or I could trim it down. I'm now going to turn this round, so we're going to look at the front again and see where the glass is going to fit to and see the shape that we want on the front part of the frame. So we're back on the front, and it's important you know which bit you're doing, whether it's the front or the back. And with the hole the right size, we're now going to start shaping the front section. Now you'll see I've hollowed through right through the centre there, and the reason I've done that is that will help you judge how much wood you've got left here. What you don't want to be doing is taking out the side here, because you will catch your tool on the chuck jaws the other side. So you want to stay clear of that, but just keep taking this down, because this is the smaller hole. You can take this down as far as you want to, as long as it's not near the jaws. So I'm going to cut a bit more out of here, and then we can look at turning the project round again and having it sitting slightly further forward. Again, if you want to, you can double check that the disc is not going to fit in that part there, and that's good. It's not supposed to fit that side. So we're going to take it off again and turn it round. Now this time, and this is quite a difficult bit, when I've remounted that, I haven't pushed it tight up to the chuck. I've left a little bit of space to move the piece away from the jaws, just a fraction, so hopefully I can cut through in this part now. You can actually hear the wood getting thinner, and I know I've got more space this side to mount than I have the other side, so I'm actually going to turn that round yet again and remount it a little bit further out, and we're actually going to break through from the front. There we go, we've now broken through, and it's much easier to see where you're going to mount and how you're going to tidy all this section up here, and again how this is actually going to be finally shaped. So now we can look at possibly turning it round again and just narrowing this section here, or we could do some more shaping on here, whichever you prefer really. Now we've cut through, it's the difficult bit, and you can easily see where the jaws are in there, and make sure we don't catch them with a tool. So I've remounted, I'm at the back again, and I don't know whether the camera will quite pick it up, but you can see the jaws are here and the little ledge is here. I'm going to take that a bit further down so our glass is a bit more to the front. Looking quite neat. I'm just going to double check that we've still got a good fit in that there. That's fine. Come on, you can get them out again, honest. There we go. Right, now you'll see the thickness here is, if I put both of those in I'll struggle to get them out, but you can see there's a massive lip. Now we can do one of two things here. Either we can leave it as thick as it is, and just cut a little ledge all the way around for the fittings to go on, or we can trim the whole piece down. The more difficult thing to do is to just cut another little ledge, and that's what I'm going to do now. And I'm going to leave the outside frame really quite nice and thick. It's a shame to just get rid of a lot of wood because it's there, and it's looking like actually quite a nice piece of wood, this. So I'm going to cut the ledge down. But first of all I'm going to get one of the fittings to make sure that I leave enough room to screw the fitting on and let it rotate to secure the back pieces in. I've got one of the little turn buttons here. They're very small, but what I'm going to do is cut a ledge so I can fit that on there, and it's going to rotate and get out of the way. So if I hold it about, I'm literally just going to hold it there and guess and mark with a pencil that fortunately I have got here. Give myself enough room, put a little mark on there, and I'm going to take this section down so it's just the right size for the face and the back plate, and leaving just a little bit extra because you're going to have a photograph or picture in there. Now if you want to, you've got some digital calipers, you can use the digital calipers to measure the distance there. Wouldn't get them too tight because, as I say, you've got to get a picture in there as well. You can lock that off, and then you can use this part just to measure your depth, and that is looking actually pretty much spot on, more by luck than judgment, that is. So we've got a little ledge that the turn button's going to go on, and we've got the right distance here. I'm now just going to tidy up the back, just sand the back and seal the back, and then we're going to turn it round, mount it finally, and then finish off the front and shape as we want. I've remounted, I've got the jaws right up to the front here, and if you're struggling to get sandpaper in there and finish, you can take it off and actually do it by hand. It's not too difficult to do it by hand, but I'm just going to do final shaping and finishing on here, and then we'll look at putting the whole kit together. So we can now begin to see what the final finished article is starting to look like. Now we're going to turn this over on the other side, and now we're going to put in our little fittings here. What I'm actually going to do is just mark, I'm going to put them on upside down just for the purposes of marking them, and I'm going to put them at 3 even spaces roughly around the frame. The distance between them isn't critical, and fortunately I have still got my pencil. I'm just going to put a little pencil mark. Now the other ones I used an awl. I would say it's really better to drill a little pilot hole for these little screws, because they're very small screws. They can break if the pilot hole isn't big enough. So I've got a 1mm drill. I'm going to take that over to the pillar drill. I've got a little bit of cloth to put underneath to make sure I don't scratch the front of the frame. I'm just going to drill 3 little pilot holes for the screws, and then we can put those little turn buttons in. And we can begin to see what the finished article looks like. And all we need to do is to find a picture to put in there. We can pad the back out if we need to. This one's got a step in it, as I said earlier. You may not have that, you may decide to go for a narrower frame, but I actually quite like the step. And that can be then either hung on the wall, or if you wanted to make a stand, you could make a stand using a hinge. I'm not going to cover that because there's so many different ways of getting this to stand up. If I cut the bottom off, I suspect it would probably stand up on its own level, but that gives you hopefully an idea of what can be done, and it's actually quite a nice kit. A little bit more work than you might think to doing that. I've been and got a photo of my little boy and the dog, sadly no longer with us, and normally I wouldn't do this in the workshop. Normally I would do this inside away from all the dust, but I've got the camera set up there, so I'm going to do it in here. We're then just going to peel off the front and rear backing of the clear acrylic sheet, or perspex, whichever you like to call it. And they can be the devil's own job to get hold of these. and try not to touch it. We'll drop that part in. The photo, and to cut the photo I just used the disc and placed that on the photo, drew around it and then cut a circle. Pop that on there, turn the little turn buttons, which I haven't got spaced very evenly, but never mind, it's not the end of the world. And there we go, one finished picture frame. Now at the time of doing the video we're still working. This is actually a prototype kit, but obviously at the time you're seeing it the kits will be ready, but I can't show you one right at this moment. But I hope that's been useful, maybe giving you a new idea of something perhaps you hadn't thought of. As I said on the other video about the 50mm picture kits, I think as a craft fair these would be very popular. I could be wrong, but certainly worth a try. If you have any questions, drop us an email. Always happy to help if we can do, and we'll see you at the next video. Happy turning. Bye bye for now.